Welcome to American Education FM, everybody. I'm Dr. Sean Brooks.
Ladies and gentlemen, I have to tell you something. This is one of those episodes where, first of all, I know it's going to be long. I don't know exactly the length, but I can just feel it. It's going to be long. There's so much information coming to the forefront here from so many different angles that I have to do my best to touch on all of it here. It really is incredible. The things going on, in our country right now, and with all of these individuals, again, attempting to control particular narratives and wavelengths of thought and 1,000 things, I find all of this beyond fascinating. There is no doubt it is biblical. No doubt. And I'm not preaching here. That's not what I'm doing. In fact, I'm going to be going after some of the people who do that and actually do it a little too much. And they throw stones when they live in a glass house, and they would do well to not do that. But I want to touch on some of those individuals here in just a second, because my God in heaven, these people who have an audience and people who claim to, be in the so-called truth movement and freedom movement and all these slogan movements, it's never ending. And the moment that someone questions them, like I said in the last episode, the moment that someone questions any of their affiliations or even someone that they talk to or asks them a question, they flip out. And then they rationalize it again, like I said in the last episode. And I'm going to bring up very specific examples in this episode too. It's so glaring and it's so bright. The hypocrisy of these individuals now is amazing. And it really does continue to show that when these people either seek the limelight or seek endless associations, and they want to be liked and they want to be at the cool kid table and they want people surrounding them all of the time, that when that happens, they apparently don't think that criticism is going to come their way because of the associations that they make. And they can't for the life of them imagine that somebody out there might know more about the associations that they're making than they do. And then, of course, if somebody dives into the current circumstances or even the past of someone else, that somehow is off limits. None of this is off limits. People are exposing hypocrites no matter where they are. People are exposing liars no matter where they are. And that's fair game. And that should always be fair game. And it is fair game because that's the world we live in and we get to do that. And I'm going to bring numerous examples to bear here in this episode also. So here's what I want to do. I've already said a little too much. What I want to do is I want to bring up just a couple of primary election observations that I mentioned very quickly. I have some of this more truth movement, freedom movement nonsense that, a lot of just weird stuff to bring up here. And then I want to get into some education stuff as well. I want to hit on the Oxford, Michigan School District superintendent search. Apparently it's down to 4 people. I haven't watched all 4+ hours of their interviews, and I'm sure they're even longer than that. Some of the clips I saw. I did watch some of it, and my God in heaven, is it remarkably embarrassing. I mean, you talk about an absolute clown show. It is next level embarrassing. And then, again, I've got some jab-related things, and then I want to round it out with a few more geopolitical situations and scenarios I think that are going to get interesting here, certainly this year, and into January of next year. But my God, okay. Again, this was one of those episodes where I just started yelling at myself and I said, you got to start recording because if you don't, you're just going to keep adding things to the show here. And there's already too much. But again, this is just incredible. Okay. First of all, let me get to the primary election stuff. I was watching the primary election stuff, of course, here in Southwest Ohio. And frankly, it basically went exactly the way that we thought for the most part. However, there was one particular race in Butler County, Ohio, that was very interesting to watch, and a lot of circumstances surrounding this particular race. And as I'm sure you go to the mailbox and you reach into the mailbox during primary season and during election year, and you get all the pamphlets and all the cutouts and all the this and the that and all the hit pieces on all the people that are on the ballots, and so and so is bad for Ohio and they're bad for America and all this other stuff. Anyway, our local representative in our county, who claims to be a conservative and clearly is not, her name is Sarah Crothers. Again, she's been the incumbent for quite some time. She's run in numerous races. She's won. She was a local representative and then a state representative, and so on and so on. So the State House District 47 is Ohio Primary State House District 47 is our area here. Sarah Crothers was running against a woman by the name of Diane Mullins. Diane is a female pastor in the area in Butler County, and one of the pamphlets that went out in everybody's mailbox was clearly put together by somebody affiliated with Sarah Crothers. Now, Sarah Crothers, as we also might expect, certainly based on this hit piece of Diane Mullins, Sarah Crothers is tied in with the Jewish lobby. Shouldn't surprise anybody. I'm sure she signs on all the dotted lines and, gets all the funding and the money and so on and so forth. What's interesting is that these hit pieces are not working quite the way that they may have in the past. In this particular race, Diane Mullins won. She beat Sarah Crothers. And here was one of the hit pieces that went out about Diane Mullins. It was a two-sided pamphlet, and on one side, it has a picture of Diane Mullins' face, and then next to her is Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and then on the other side is Ilhan Omar. And then it's the three of their pictures all next to each other. Again, Diane Mullins is running as a Republican because she is a Republican. So the hit piece specifically says this. It says, which member of the socialist squad, quote unquote, said the Jews are trying to take over the world? And then it has two arrows pointing at Diane Mullins. On the other side of this pamphlet, which is just hilarious, it says crazy Diane Mullins. It says fits right in with the socialist squad, quote unquote. And then it has three small little snippets of information here. The first one, it says, just like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and the rest of her socialist squad, Diane Mullins peddles an anti-Semitic conspiracy theories. And this is referenced from the Cincinnati Enquirer and a particular article there, apparently. The next one says, Mullins accused the Jews of attempting to take control of our government and institute a global one-world government. And this was from a Twitter post that they referenced. The next one says, but it gets worse. Mullins doesn't just hate Jews. She even called anyone who opposes the anti-Israeli terrorist group Hamas a communist. And that comes from, again, another Twitter post, apparently affiliated with the Wilson Center, whatever the hell that is. And then it says at the bottom, Diane Mullins isn't just crazy, she's dangerous. Too dangerous for Ohio. Then it says early voting begins February 21st, election day is March 19th. Don't vote for crazy Diane Mullins. Now, look, there's a few things here. First of all, any time that the term crazy gets thrown around regarding individuals, there was a time in our history when, again, many of us were brainwashed and we weren't awake and we didn't know what was going on. But that term crazy would get thrown around for people to be remarkably dismissive without bringing any specifics to bear whatsoever. So again, it's name-calling at basically the most juvenile level possible. Again, Dave Chappelle was called crazy when he decided to not do his show anymore because of creative rights and 1,000 other reasons, and he was, of course, starting to figure out that Hollywood was beyond disgusting. And so what did they do, of course? They smeared him everywhere and called him crazy. Well, people are awake to that now. they're awake to that dismissive smear campaign of just blindly calling someone crazy. The second thing, which is equally as important, if not more, is that more people are waking up to the Jewish lobby today than ever before. Who controls the taxes? Who controls the banks? Who raises the taxes on people? And as I've said here locally, there are 88 counties, if memory serves, in the state of Ohio. Half of them are having their taxes increase by upwards of 37 to 40%. Their property taxes specifically. This is a thing. This is happening. And Sarah Crothers recently, of course, was making the rounds basically even before Christmas, going from city council to city council and Chamber of Commerce to whatever else, to every single town and city in Butler County and in the other areas where she allegedly represents locally, and basically saying that this tax hike isn't her fault, there's nothing she can do, don't blame her, and blah, blah, blah. Well, that didn't work out for Sarah Crothers. Now, Sarah Crothers apparently also has, as one might expect, some Masonic ties, which are a bit shady, and I've had some individuals who were associated with an auction that took place at her parents' house a number of years ago that basically indicated that that was the case. Either way, that's a little side note, but again, that shouldn't shock anybody being a politician. But the actual quote-unquote Republican Party of even our own county didn't represent her and did not endorse her at all. So the veil is lifting. That's my overall point. I voted for Dianne Mullins, and Dianne Mullins won by 700 votes, approximately, which is great. Again, what's Dianne going to do in the future? I don't know, but I think people are going to watch it with an even more close eye today than they ever have before in the past, and I think that's a very good thing. And that's exactly what we should be doing. That it doesn't matter if we support people for, an extended period of time or a short period of time. We should always look into them. We should always observe them. And yes, if they're out there in the public light and in the limelight in any way, certainly if they're a politician or even if they aren't, we have a responsibility to pay attention to these people and the moves that they make and what they do. Now, again, what was interesting about this also is as I was watching this on TV, this was one of the Butler County, Southwest Ohio races that was one of the last to be called. There was a 700 vote, give or take, 700 vote swing. And it went almost to 11 o'clock at night before they actually called it. But there was at least, I would say, an hour's worth, if not longer than that, where the percentage of votes that had been tallied remained the same. So it was saying something like 81.6% of the votes are in. And then you're watching all these other races throughout the state, certainly in the local area where I live. They're running at the bottom ticker on the bottom of the screen, and you're seeing the percentages change in all the other races, and you're seeing the votes change in all the other races, but for some reason this one froze for a little while. This again was a race, I think, that clearly Sarah didn't want to lose, and clearly it was a race that other, we'll say, more powerful people, quote unquote, didn't want to go this way. So, as small as insignificant as people might think that this is, I think it is a very quick snapshot and sort of a magnifying glass on a very singular race that can show something that is likely to happen, of course, in the future. And we already know this is already happening across the United States right now. There are still races, primary races, that have not been called yet. Lots of them. Some are in Georgia. Some are in California. I mean, they have to be in every state that's already held their primaries. So, again, just because this is happening now doesn't mean it's not going to happen on Election Day in November. It most certainly will. All kinds of races are going to go particular ways that people don't want to go that way, and then they will freeze those races and say, well, it's too close to call. And then they just drag it out. And what have we learned from the past? Every time that they drag out these races, it's indicative of the fact that they're covering something up. They're attempting to anyway. They're finding more votes. They're frantically counting more votes. They're frantically filling out more voting sheets and ballots. They're frantically running them through a scanner, pounding on a computer, traveling from point A to point B and running boxes of ballots as much as they can. That's usually what goes on any single time that the voting or the counting just stops. So, again, just keep an eye on that going forward here, because this is something, again, that's likely to occur certainly in November. But again, congratulations to Diane Mullins. I find this hilarious. The crazy smear didn't work, and all of the things that she allegedly said, which I hope she actually did say, either from the pulpit or from wherever that she was speaking, that I hope she actually did say it, is my point, because she's not wrong. Yes, there is a one world government scheme that exists. And yes, there are individuals who are Jewish who are trying to take control of our government. In fact, they already have. And they have for a very long time, as we know. This is accurate history. But again, when these individuals make these smear campaigns, they don't know that it's blowing up in their face because they don't know their own constituents. They don't know that we're awake. They don't know that we are learning at a faster pace than they are. For example, Congressman Warren Davidson. Okay? Now, I voted for this guy again. Probably a mistake, but I did it anyway. You've heard me bring his name up before, and we, of course, are smarter than he is, and we know more about what's going on than he does. But he had a number of people get in his ear about the shots, about the COVID bioweapon shots, and what they're doing to people. And he showed up at one of those Marjorie Taylor Greene, hearings very quickly, or the one hearing that she did have. And he showed up very quickly and goes, okay, so let me ask a couple of generic questions because my constituents are, a little worried. And yeah, it was an election year and he knew what he was doing. But even so, I bet people are just banging on his door and sending him copious amounts of emails about what's actually happening. Again, the simple fact that these representatives who claim to be asking these kinds of questions, the fact that they're not talking with their own sheriffs that are in the actual counties or districts where they're all representing, allegedly, you would think that they'd all be talking. You would think that they would all be communicating about this. You would think that Warren Davidson would send a message or an email or pick up the phone and say, hey, can I talk to Sheriff Richard Jones real quick? This is Warren Davidson. Hey, Sheriff, what do you think about these COVID shots and these COVID vaccines? Have you received any information about how deadly they are? And have you received any information in the mail from any citizens? Or have you talked with anybody about what all this is and what we can do to get rid of them out of Butler County and Preble County and so on and so on? I mean, are these guys not talking to one another? And the answer is they must not be. Or they are talking with one another and they're keeping a lid on what's really going on. Because as of now, again, the end of the week, Sheriff Richard Jones is in physical possession of the documents that I have sent him that prove that this is a biological weapon that is killing copious amounts of people, and that he has a legal responsibility to investigate and then eliminate and seize all of these shots. He has to do that. Now, is he going to? No. No, he won't. He rubs shoulders with the feds. He rubs elbows with the feds. He's openly said that. This guy is, again, we are smarter than these people. We are smarter than the people running. And this is the issue. But unfortunately, which is kind of going to lead right into my talk now about the so-called truth movement. This right here, like I said in the last episode, this is the biggest rub that exists right now. This really is where the rubber meets the road and the bullet hits the bone. It's right here. And it has to do with what is comfortable for people to hear and what is uncomfortable for them to hear. People don't want to believe that these people that they've never met before in their entire lives, that they've seen on screen and seen do seemingly good things, that these people would have any nefarious association with anybody whatsoever. It's completely out of their minds. They don't even want to think about it. Again, voting for Sarah Crothers is a comfortable vote because I'm going to believe the propaganda that's in my mailbox about a Diane Mullins and how Jews are trying to take over the government. I mean, it's about comfort, unfortunately, for a great deal of people. And that right there should prove the brainwashing, because a level of comfort isn't necessarily factual. It's the that's why they call it the comfortable delusion. But getting people to understand this is very difficult. But again, the proof lies in the pudding when the individuals being criticized are telling people to not criticize them, number one. And then number two, they'll say things like, hey, we're all in this together. We're all on the same side. We need to stop the bickering. We need to stop this. We need to stop that. I'm sorry. That's not what it is. We get to ask questions. We get to investigate. We get to look into what people say and how they behave. We get to do this. And this has to be done. Which now brings me to this. Let me dive into a group that I've referenced, of course, on my show with regularity, and I really do believe that there is some dissension in the ranks here regarding this particular group. I'm not trying to divide them. They're individuals, and they can do whatever they like. But I'm going to point out some inconsistencies and some disingenuous nature and some flat-out lying that is remarkably problematic. And I'm specifically talking about the 5 docs on Rumble. Now, I'm not talking about all of them, okay? But it is clear to me that among the 5 of them, that there are 2 individuals who are, I would say, a little more disingenuous than perhaps the others. Palevsky is consistent. That's been his take, and I agree with him on a great and many things. He's very consistent, and he is not shying away from the virology discussion. He knows viruses aren't real. He knows this. He's even in that documentary, The Viral Delusion. So that's number one. Dr. Lee Merritt. Again, I was in the same room with her once. I wanted to introduce myself. But I thought I'm just going to observe, and I don't want to influence what anybody says or does or, anything like that. I just want to observe. And it, of course, was back in San Antonio during that White Coat Summit thing. And what I got out of that regarding her was that she was one of the more forward-thinking individuals among that entire group. Unfortunately, the last time that they were all together on the steps of the Supreme Court or wherever the hell that was in Washington not that long ago, she was there with them again. I wish she wouldn't have been. I mean, she knows that Simone Gold is shady. She knows, that Robert Malone is equally as shady, if not worse. But she decided to still show up and associate, which I thought was a bit unfortunate. Christiane Northrup, again, I have no qualms with her whatsoever. Again, rather consistent, I think. But then again, Sherry Tenpenny and Carrie Madej. In the last episode of the 5 docs, it's evident to me that these 2 are the 2 individuals among the 5 of them that spend a great deal of time preaching and sort of being evangelical, we'll say. I'm not telling them how to behave. They can do whatever they want, okay? I just want to bring up some rather interesting things regarding specifically Carrie Madej that I find to be odd and have actually been proven to be remarkably nefarious and her being disingenuous. You may recall that back in the day, I want to say it was 2 years ago, she was in a plane crash, if I'm not mistaken. I think it was 2 years ago. She was in a plane crash, and her boyfriend at the time was who's an older gentleman, but he was a pilot, and they were in a plane together, just the 2 of them, and he was flying. They took off from a Georgia airport, and then They crashed just a couple of miles, apparently, away from basically just after takeoff. Almost immediately after coming out of the hospital, Carrie Madej was making the rounds on numerous people's shows talking about this plane crash and her perspective of the plane crash and all of the details and whatever else. I'm going to make a very long story short here, and then I'm going to include in the description below a video that will prove to you that Carrie Madej was lying about her involvement in that plane crash. Yes, she was in it, but she was lying about what role she played in it and what she was doing, and then what other people were saying and how other people were behaving. It's a 16-minute video. It's available on YouTube. In fact, if you type in Carrie Madej lying about plane crash, I think it's the first one that pops up. But you need to take a look at this video. And I'm serious. Like, everybody who listens to this show has got to watch this video. She's very disingenuous, and she gets caught lying about, like I said, her involvement and her rendition of what people did and what people said and so on and so forth. Now, let's ask ourselves a series of questions. Why would someone lie about a tragic event like that? No one died. Both people were injured. And again, everybody ultimately survived. Everybody was fine afterwards. But why would someone lie about such an event like that? Is it for attention? Is it for money? Do they think that attention brings money? Does money bring attention? Does stirring the pot and creating more theories about why it took place and what was going on, does that bring more attention and more clicks and more likes and potentially more donations and more money? Is that a motive for people? Sure. Sure it is. It's an unfortunate motive, and I have other examples I'm going to bring up later, specifically regarding James O'Keefe. Same thing. So, again, I'll tell you what I'll do. Here's what I'll do. I'll pick out a very specific instance in this plane crash scenario where she clearly lied. In the story that she told regarding the plane crash to numerous people, and I remember it because I was listening to her talk about it when she was talking about it on the 5 Docs and then on a couple other programs. At one point, she stated that she was making these phone calls to people, and that she was on the phone with 911, and that she was on the phone with numerous people. As it turns out, that's not true. In fact, she disparaged the 911 dispatch person, who sounds like an older black female, who was very calm and doing her job and a number of other things. But she was claiming that this individual didn't know what was going on, that this individual was not being accurate with information, and that this individual even asked her about her COVID status, her COVID vaccine status. That's not true. That never happened. And they play the 911 dispatch call in this video. And it's not Carrie on the phone. It's the pilot. Again, you can listen to it for yourself. It's remarkable. But people caught her lying about all of this. And as you would expect, when a plane goes down, there's an entire FAA investigation. If I'm saying that right, FAA. Either way, the airplane organization investigates because they have to, because it's the law, allegedly. So who did they interview? Well, they interviewed the pilot. So if the pilot's story doesn't match up with what Carrie is saying, then that means someone's lying. But even Carrie, regarding her own admission, she openly admitted that she wasn't involved with the investigation because, again, she wasn't the pilot. Unfortunately, given her rendition of the story, which isn't accurate, and her going on all of the shows that she went on, she almost cost that 911 dispatch lady her job. Because, again, she was slandering the woman. or libeling her, however you want to phrase it. I mean, she was being beyond disingenuous with her rendition of what took place. This is a serious problem. I mean, again, a person can tell the truth 1,000,000 times and then lie about a very serious thing. What does that make? What does that make that person? Does it make him a truth teller, or does it make him a liar? I'll let you figure that out. But man, not good. So then, I started watching the last episode of the 5 Docs, which was with just Sherry Tenpenny and Carrie Madej. And I've had some disagreements with Sherry Tenpenny about a number of things. Again, swallowing ivermectin like they're Skittles before you go onto an airplane, not a good idea. There's no proof that it's a prophylactic medicine whatsoever. She's done a lot of great work regarding anti-vax and not taking vaccines and how vaccines are dangerous. I'm not disparaging the woman's career. She's had an incredible career, no doubt about it, and very bright lady. But she also does a lot of evangelical, sort of know-it-all, I've got it all figured out approach, which, I think Christ has it figured out better than any of us, which is why I tend to take a back seat to the whole thing for the most part. I mean, I love Jesus just like lots of people, but I don't go out there writing numerous articles about how people should behave, regarding their religion or their faith in Christ. Either way, I know everybody's different and people have the freedom to do that. But she said something at the beginning of the last episode which tipped me off to the fact that it's evident that I'm not the only person who's criticized her, that numerous people have. And that numerous people have criticized her and her associations and the people that she talks to on her show and a number of other things. And what does she strike that up to? What does she strike that criticism up to? She calls it bickering. She quite literally, at the beginning of the episode, and then at the end of the episode, Carrie Madej also agrees with her and piles on. But she says, we have to stop all of the bickering. We have to stop all of the division. And she specifically says, because of the freedom movement. We have to stop questioning individuals in the so-called freedom movement. To which, again, I thought to myself, these people don't even hear themselves talk anymore. They're all associating with these slogans now. Freedom movement. We don't even say that one either. Truth movement, we don't say that one either. I mean, what is this? What is going on? Is there some promo code for the freedom movement now? Where they can line their pockets because they sold a few supplements to somebody? Or they get a slight kickback? What's happening here? So we get to ask those questions is my point. Now, as the episode goes on, I would say for the first half to 75% of the entire episode, Tenpenny and Madej are preaching and being very evangelical about a number of things. Specifically, again, Christ and the church and this, that, and the other. And here's where it gets real weird. Not only at the same time was I listening to this, but I was running through the comments on their Rumble channel. And I recommend you do the same. I was going through the comments, and someone openly stated, they said, or they asked the question, is Carrie Madej an Eastern Star? My eyes perked up, and I thought, I know what Eastern Stars are. This is interesting. And I thought to myself, I wonder if she says it in this episode. So, first of all, let me describe what an Eastern Star is. I don't have any proof that Carrie Madej is an Eastern Star. Maybe she said it in the past and I haven't heard her. I don't know. But here's what the Eastern Star is, or the Order of the Eastern Star, specifically from Wikipedia. Now, I know it's Wikipedia, but when it comes to things like this, they don't lie about stuff like this. This is legit. The Order of the Eastern Star is Freemasonry-related fraternal organization. It's a Freemason fraternal organization. Their logo is a pentagram. And here's what it says, quote, the Order of the Eastern Star is a Masonic appendant, body open to both men and women. It was established in 1850 by lawyer and educator Rob Morris, a noted Freemason, and adopted and approved as an appendant body of the Masonic fraternity in 1873. The order is based on some teachings from the Bible and is open to people of all religious beliefs. It has approximately 10,000 chapters in 18 countries and approximately 500,000 members under its General Grand Chapter. Members of the Order of the Eastern Star are aged 18 and older. Men must be Master Masons, and women must have specific relationships with Masons. Originally, a woman would have to be the daughter, widow, wife, sister, or mother of a Master Mason. The order now allows other relatives, as well as allowing Job's daughters, it says, it's capitalized, Rainbow Girls, and members of the Organization of Triangles, New York only, to become members when of age. Now, is she an Eastern Star or not? I don't know. Someone in the comments section mentioned it. And then I kept listening to the episode. And here's what Madej actually admitted to, which, by the way, the name Madej is Polish and Jewish. Just saying. Just throwing it out there. It says, she actually said this. She said that she attends a specific Messianic synagogue. And then I went, uh-oh, what's this about? Because she wears a cross around her neck and she talks about Jesus Christ all of the time. And again, does a lot of evangelical preaching. And I mean, she does a lot of it. So I got on Wikipedia again and I typed in Messianic Judaism or Messianic Christianity. And again, they're kind of the same, but slightly different. Although it seems confusing to me. I'll just put it that way. It seems confusing. But again, here's specifically what it says. And again, this is a brief summary from Wikipedia. It says Messianic Judaism, which, by the way, I should say this very quickly too. Their symbol for Messianic Jews is, it's this. It's a menorah on top of the Star of Remphan, which is then on top of the upside down fish. Again, it's like it doesn't seem good to me. That's just my take. It seems a bit strange. Anywho, it says the following. Messianic Judaism is a modernist and syncretic sect that considers itself Jewish, despite all major Jewish groups. Many, including many Jewish authority figures, consider it a part of the Christian movement of evangelicalism. Again, when I first read that, I thought, well, that makes sense then, doesn't it? Given Carrie Madej's tone and the things that she talks about with regularity and apparently feels the need to let everybody know this all of the time. But again, my concern has to do with associations, of course, and then the behaviors that these individuals engage in, and then their inability to own up to the fact that they're liars. I mean, their dismissive nature of their own sin, I find to be fascinating. Because they have all this advice for other people, and yet when you hold up a mirror to them, they scream and they shout. I find that fascinating. Anyway, it continues here, the description of this. It says it emerged in the 1960s and 1970s from the earlier Hebrew Christian movement and was most prominently propelled through the nonprofit organization Jews for Jesus, quote unquote, founded in 1973 by Martin Moshe Rosen, an American minister under the Conservative Baptist Association. So, can a person be Jewish and Baptist? Can a person be a rabbi, potentially, and Baptist at the same time? Is that how that works? Seems like a blurring of the lines here, doesn't it? It continues, it says, evangelical Protestants who identify as Messianic Jews adhere to conventional Christian beliefs, including the concept of salvation through faith in Jesus, referred to by the Hebrew language name Yahshua among adherents, as the Jewish Messiah and Savior from sin, and the spiritual authority of the Bible, including the Old and New Testaments. Belief in Jesus as a messianic figure and as divine, i.e., God the Son, is considered by Jews to be one of the most defining distinctions between Judaism and Christianity. Among other evangelical Christian groups, Messianic Judaism is usually accepted as a form of Christianity. However, it says adherents of Messianic Judaism claim that the movement is instead a form of Judaism. In the Hebrew language, they tend to identify themselves with the terms, I'm not even going to say, I can't even read that, in opposition to being identified as, quote unquote, Christians. Jewish organizations inside and outside of Israel reject this framing. The Supreme Court of Israel has also rejected this claim in cases related to the Israeli law of return, and Messianic Judaism is recognized only as a Christian movement in the country. In this context, it says, there is some discourse among scholars as to whether Messianic Judaism should be labeled a Jewish or religious sect, though the typical consensus identifies it as a stream of the Christian religion. It says from 2003 to 2007, the movement grew from 150 Messianic houses of worship in the United States to as many as 438, with over 100 in Israel and more worldwide. Congregations are often affiliated with larger Messianic organizations or alliances. As of 2012, Messianic population estimates were between 175,000 and 250,000 members in the United States, between 10,000 and 20,000 members in Israel, and an estimated total worldwide membership of 350,000 people. Again, I just, what is, this is just interesting. Again, the open admissions that these people make about their associations and their affiliations, and what do they assume? Do they assume that we're not going to do a basic internet search about what that means, learn a little bit about it, and then say, wait a minute, this seems odd to me. This seems all a bit odd. Again, it goes back to the Al Capone quote. Be careful who you associate with. Be careful of who your friends are. I'd rather have 4 quarters than 100 pennies. This is part of it too. These individuals in the so-called freedom movement, as Dr. Sherry Tenpenny likes to coin it apparently, this is not bickering. We're asking questions. This certainly explains, again, why they do all the evangelist work that they seem to be doing everywhere that they go. And I suppose I'll just wrap the two of them up by saying this. At the end of that episode, most recently, with just the two of them, at the very end, Dr. Tenpenny looks at Carrie Madej and says, so what message do you want to leave with people? And what Dr. Madej does is she repeats what Tenpenny said at the beginning of the episode, and I sort of lumped it all together in one giant quote because I find the words that they use to be fascinating. She said, we have to come together, we have to think before we speak, we have to stop bickering, and then we have to know who the real enemy is. These were 4 categories, so to speak, of what she exactly said. I find that to be remarkably hypocritical and disingenuous of her, given her lying about her involvement in this plane crash and the role that she played throughout, and then going on all of these shows and telling and spinning a yarn for everybody, and then getting caught. And now she doesn't want to talk about it anymore, because if you ask her about the plane crash, she'll blow you off and say, well, I really don't want to talk about it anymore. Well, why is that? Is it because you got caught lying about it? This is important, ladies and gentlemen. Liars are liars any way you slice it. It's that simple. Being ignorant on a subject is one thing. That doesn't make a person a liar. It just makes them unknowledgeable. But when a person is confronted with the opposite of what they've been saying the entire time, and then they lose their minds and they flip out, I mean, I don't know. It seems weird to me, does it not? Which leads me now to this. James O'Keefe. You've heard me play audio of James O'Keefe before on the show, and how when he was doing his Twitter Spaces thing a while back, because he has interesting ties, and he openly has donors who back him. This is not a guy who is in financial dire straits. This is not a guy who has legal problems. This is not a guy who's going to go to jail for anything. He's insulated. And this right here, too, is part of the issue, is that when you start to criticize somebody like James O'Keefe, people do typically one of three things. They either pass over it and make no comment, they get very defensive, and they go, well, I like James O'Keefe, and I like everything he does, and you're an asshole. And, and then they just start calling names, to people. I mean, hell, I got called a Fed the other day on Gab. Give me a break. I'm a federal agent. I'm on their flipping list, for God's sakes. How can I be a federal agent and be on one of their watch lists? How does that work? How does that even work? So, and of course, the third option is people will comment and they'll go, you know what? I thought there was something odd about his behavior and all that sort of self-aggrandizing behavior and back-patting that he does, like my shit doesn't stink and 1,000 other things. And then at the exact same time, of course, he's also affiliated with a wellness company. And at the exact same time, he's constantly asking people for money. So before I get into what happened with the Pfizer whistleblower and him, which, by the way, I will also link this in the description below. You have got to watch this. You have to watch this. This Pfizer whistleblower was on Stu Peters just the other night, on Wednesday night. A Justin Leslie, if I'm getting his name correct. Absolutely remarkable how he describes James O'Keefe, his behavior, and how James O'Keefe threw this guy under the bus. And how Carrie Madej was actually a bit involved in all of this. Also strange. Again, people trying to take credit and get attention for things that they have nothing to do with. It's amazing. But let me do this first. Josiah Richwine sent me this, and I want to play this particular piece of audio. This was James O'Keefe at some it's not a small gathering, it's some gathering, quote-unquote thought leaders and all these septuagenarian boomers in the room, doing whatever they're doing, and all these donors and other individuals. And again, I don't mean to disparage anybody of those generations. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just looking at the room, and you can see the ages of the people in the room. But he's sitting in a chair, and there's a table between he and Eric Metaxas. I don't like Eric Metaxas either for a variety of reasons. He seems strange to me. He just doesn't sit right. So you can assume Eric Metaxas also, again, has numerous donors. This is 47 seconds long, and I want you to hear what James O'Keefe says. And then I'm going to read to you an email that I just received from James O'Keefe regarding one of those, it's just one of those generic emails that goes out to just about anybody. Okay, that you open up your phone and you're like, oh my God, and then you just hit delete because you don't even care. But let me play this first for you, so you can hear this kind of, again, very self-important, back-patting behavior that he engages in. Like, I'm the cat's pajamas and I'm the greatest thing since sliced bread. Give James a listen in 3, 2, 1.
What is your price? Is it 10 million? Is it 20 million? Is it 100 million? What is your price? Because if your price is not your life, then you are for sale. If If your price is not your life, then you are for sale. So if you're going to be a truth teller, your price has to be your life. I can't surround myself with people whose price is not their life, because the enemy, whatever the enemy is, whether it be physical, legal, spiritual, will attack the vulnerability of the person who can be compromised. So you get real spiritual real fast if you're going to do this type of work.
Now, a couple of things. Right out of the gate, of course, it's a quick little video that I'm sure he mashed up together, or he put together to, again, use as a promotional thing, which he did, as a matter of fact. Ironically enough, to get more donations. I mean, the hypocrisy of these people is glaring. It's blinding, as a matter of fact. So they pan around the room when he says what he says, and there's some people, nodding their heads and going, "Oh my God, that's really deep. That's so deep." First of all, the first time I heard that, what James said, was when Carrie Lake said it. She said it in this alleged, hidden recording that she was doing of a Republican leader out in Arizona who was allegedly bribing her, and she said the same thing. She looked apparently at the guy. And I'm not carrying water for Carrie Lake either. I'm simply saying she said generally the same thing. "So what are you going to pay me? Are you going to pay me $5 million? Are you going to be $10 million, $20 million? And she runs down this list. Well, that's what James just did. And then, of course, he wraps it up by saying, if your price isn't your life, then you're for sale. Well, isn't that ironic? Because I just got an email again, like I said earlier, from James O'Keefe. And again, this is put out either by him or the Liberty Dispatch, which is at the very top. It says, "Please read the message below from our sponsor, O'Keefe Media Group." So his group is sponsoring other people now. So he doesn't need money, ladies and gentlemen. He's sponsoring other people. And other people are sponsoring him. This guy's well insulated. He's fine. Here's what it says. And by the way, the subject line is, "What is your price?" It says, "Dear friend, what is your price? Is it 10 million? 20 million? Is it 100 million? If your price is not your life, then you are for sale. Consider that, and I'll repeat it. If your price is not your life, then you are for sale. If you're going to be a truth teller, then your price has to be your life." And right to the very right of it, it says, "What is your price? Enable OMG's pursuit of transparency. Donate today." You have to be shitting me. What's my price? And then you stretch your hand out for a donation? Go to hell. You have to be joking. They don't even hear the words coming out of their own mouth anymore. They must think that we are on our knees, begging for them to tell us things that we've never heard before. You've got to be joking. I understand the ignorant criticism that somebody would say regarding what I'm about to now say. I mean, I understand it. I already know what they're going to say before they even say it, and before I say what I'm going to say. What has James O'Keefe really done? Has he told you anything you didn't really already know? I'm not saying he doesn't wake up some people. I'm not saying that. It's a mathematical probability. Of course he would. You cast enough lines in the water on a constant basis, you're eventually going to catch a fish. Someone's going to bite on, and somebody's going to be like, "Oh, wow, I didn't know that." I mean, that's basic math. That's just the way that the odds work. That's fine. But James O'Keefe likes dressing up like a gay guy and pretending he's gay to go on gay dates with people to tell him things that we already know. Let me briefly run through it. Pfizer's corrupt, the IRS is corrupt, our government is corrupt, and people who work within those organizations are usually gay and corrupt. Did we not know that? Is this new? Is this a news flash to all of us? I thought we knew this. So I've said this before regarding James O'Keefe, and I'm sticking with it because it's still true. What he does is for someone, but it's not us. We move at a faster pace than he does. While he's playing dress up and figuring out what next gay date he's going to go on with some government employee to figure out something that we already know about, we are leaps and bounds ahead of him on a separate dimension and a separate wavelength. It just so happens that he's in the limelight. And I'm not saying that because people like myself want to be in the limelight. Hell no. I want nothing to do with it. And it's not because I don't have the courage. It has absolutely nothing to do with courage. It has to do with who you have to rub elbows with to get in that position. To rub elbows with the likes of Eric Metaxas, with the room full of people, where you're, again, making it sound like you're the greatest thing since sliced bread, and that you've done something that really no one else can do, which is absurd. Please. I mean, James O'Keefe is the one who gives the cameras and the undercover footage to people. He himself even says it, I might add. I mean, I've heard him say it numerous times. He's openly said anybody can do this. It doesn't just have to be it doesn't have to be me. Well, what's interesting is people have always done this, James. They've always done it on their own, and they don't need his direction. But there are a lot of people, again, who I understand would take his instruction and take his direction. And I suppose that's fine. But the blatant hypocrisy in what he says, and then sticking his hand out and going, well, I have a price. I told you that I don't have a price, but as it turns out, I do. So please donate. Bullshit. It's disgusting. And this is what now leads me to this. This Justin Leslie individual who was on Stu Peters, this is a former Pfizer whistleblower, and I aired one of the videos on a war video recently that he took undercover of a woman, she looked Hispanic, working at Pfizer, talking about the Johnson & Johnson shots and how they're hurting people, but there's not a whole lot that they can do, and they're small cases, but who cares kind of thing, and she blows it off. And then, of course, there are other individuals that he talks to also, and he links his own website and his own documentary, which he had to release on his own, which he talks about with Stu Peters. But the reason that he had to release this on his own was because of what went down with him and James O'Keefe, and then ultimately Project Veritas and O'Keefe Media Group. So I'm going to summarize this as quickly as I can, but I'm not going to do it justice. You have to go over to Stu Peters and watch this, and like I said, I'll link it in the description below. So if I get something wrong, forgive me. The timeline is that as he was working for Pfizer, he went to Project Veritas when that was still together and James O'Keefe was still there, and he asked them for recording materials so that he could record the people at his work. Project Veritas knew about this. They were involved with him. They said, absolutely, go do it. He did it. He recorded all of these people. They looked at the footage, and they said, we can't air this information because you've recorded it. It's in Massachusetts, and there's a law that says you can't record them in Massachusetts, and so on and so on. So you have to put yourself in the shoes, if you can, of a whistleblower here. This young guy recorded people in his own work, handed this information to Project Veritas, and then they sat on it. Which again means metaphorically, as a whistleblower, he's shitting his pants now. Because he's saying to himself, I gave you this information. I told you what I was going to do for the purpose of you releasing this information. You're afraid now of potentially being charged with what? A misdemeanor? For releasing footage in a state at the time when it was still illegal, even though it isn't anymore? But again, at the fear of that, you're going to hang me out to dry. And so instead of airing the footage, they hired him. They decided to hire this Justin Leslie Pfizer whistleblower. And so he then went undercover, the Pfizer guy did, And he was the one who recorded the black, gay Pfizer doctor that very famously became the last story that James O'Keefe came in on. Now, again, I know that James O'Keefe has done his own undercover work and then come back in, into the room or even in the same room and taken off his glasses and said, "You've been talking to James O'Keefe. Do you not know this?" I mean, I know that. I get it. And it's good work. I'm not saying it's not. He's highlighting the fact that these people are so stupid that they don't even know that they're talking to James O'Keefe as they're talking to James O'Keefe. They'll be like, "Oh yeah, I know who he is." And then he's looking at him and he's going, "Do you? Because you're talking to him right now. I'm him." And they're like, "Oh God." I mean, I've brought that up before. I find that to be also fascinating. But at the same time, that particular Pfizer story with that gay black doctor, James O'Keefe came in at the end, of course, and confronted the guy, and then the guy, of course, denied everything and ran out of the room. "Who are you? What's going on? This is strange. Get out of here." And he's losing his mind. I mean, it was hilarious. But even so, it was this Justin Leslie guy who was the one who was doing the interviewing. So he says. And I think I'm getting that correct. But there's another aspect of this in this timeline which is beyond strange, and it ties in Carrie Madej. Back in October of 2021, Carrie Madej was making the rounds on the 5 Docs and on Stu Peters' show, saying that she has obtained vials of 3 separate brands of the quote-unquote COVID vaccine, and that a Pfizer whistleblower or someone gave it to her. And he goes, "I was the one who gave it to her." And then he runs, and then she immediately starts running to these people's shows and telling them what she's seeing. He gives the indication that he didn't tell her to do that necessarily. Again, you have to put yourself in the shoes of a whistleblower. Having been one myself, I can tell you, it can be a scary situation because you immediately go from trusting a great deal of people to trusting no one. So I can certainly empathize with the guy, without a doubt. But James O'Keefe isn't all he's cracked up to be. And you're going to hear Stu Peters, of course, get raging mad, and rightfully so, as does this Justin Leslie guy. Because they play 2 particular clips on this particular episode, and it's alarming. I mean, the information is alarming. Again, these people are going, "Well, yeah, it's hurting people, but that's not our job to pay attention to, and who cares," kind of thing. And again, they blow it off. But the timeline and the time in history matters. That was in 2021. That was before October of 2021. If Project Veritas would have released that information back then, the lives that could have been saved. Again, this is the messed up part about all of this, is that I think all of us could go back in time and say to themselves, "Wait a minute, we all could have done, myself included, a little bit more at the time that we didn't do." And I'm not openly criticizing everybody with a broad brush. I'm simply saying that there's a lot to this. But again, if you're going to be in a position as a so-called company like Project Veritas and O'Keefe Media Group claim to be, and you're going to hang out your own sources to dry, and then not air the information that they bring to bear that can save people's lives, then why are you doing it in the first place? I thought that was the point. I thought the point was to air the information publicly to save people's lives. So as a result of not releasing the information, again, they ended up hiring him for O'Keefe Media Group. And this Justin Leslie guy, the Pfizer whistleblower, followed O'Keefe from Project Veritas to O'Keefe Media Group, and then he ended up resigning. And he took some of the footage with him, but apparently O'Keefe Media Group still has some of the other footage, and they haven't released it yet either. So the Justin Leslie guy has released now his footage in his own documentary, which I'll do my best to link it in the description below if I can find it. But again, Stu Peters brings it up on his particular episode where the 2 of them talk. So That's my overall point here. This deserves criticism. We should not blindly be going, well, we should just trust everything they do and say, and we should support them to the very last day on earth. No. These are human beings. They are not prophets. And they are fallible also. And they're making some massive mistakes along the way while patting themselves on the back again, like they're the cat's pajamas all of the time. I have a problem with that. That's troublesome to me. And then, of course, as I've said before numerous times, and certainly in the last episode, their affiliations with one another. Birds of a feather flock together. They're all in the same clique. They're all in the same group. They don't let people in. They certainly don't let certain people out unless they have them sign non-disclosure agreements or other things, which seem beyond shady. It's very weird. But it's not genuine, is my point. There's a lot of disingenuous things that are happening here, which are a problem. So, yes, be careful who you follow, no doubt about it. But don't ever be afraid to ask questions of these people and figure out who they are. I mean, I'm simple, okay? I'm a simple guy. I'm not affiliated with any of these giant groups or organizations, never will be, don't want to be. That should tell people something right there about my level of authenticity, I would hope. But at the exact same time, you don't have to believe me either. It's, I don't know. It's just yuck. The whole thing is gross to me. It's just gross. And it should prove to people, I mean, it should be the default setting on the way that people actually understand what's happening in this war. It should be the stone cold proof that there's always more going on than what you think is going on. That you should never look up to any of these individuals, regardless of who they are, like they're your family members or your friends or whatever. You should casually observe them and then take in copious amounts of information about them, in particular, if someone has a criticism about one of them. Just like Amazing Polly has criticisms with Sarah Westall and a number of other individuals. Yeah, people get to do that. And if we reach out to these individuals and we ask them questions and they immediately become defensive and start to flip out, well, it's kind of telling. It shows how little they're willing to go mentally regarding their affiliations, their associations, what they know or what they don't know. So, there you go. That's my 2 cents on that. I find this to be very interesting. I think this is going to continue to be interesting. And again, like I said, the videos that I mentioned earlier thus far in this episode, I will link in the description below so that you can check them out for yourself. And you have to. I mean, you've got to watch these. They're not long, and they're highly revealing. So, there you go. Okay. Education-related things, and there are many to discuss. Let me get into it here. First of all, this was thrown my way from the College Fix, and it was titled, "Marriage Promotes White Supremacy, So Saith a George Mason Professor," where they said the following, quote, "I theorize that marriage fundamentalism, like structural racism, is a key structuring element of white heteropatriarchal supremacy. So saith Professor Bethany Letic." I'm saying that right? Letique? I don't know. Her name's confusing and she's confusing. And she said this in the Journal of Marriage and Family. Quote, "Marriage fundamentalism can be understood as an ideological and cultural phenomenon where adherents espouse to superiority of the two-parent married family." She did not respond to 2 emailed requests for comment on her views sent in the past 3 weeks. The Fix asked if she would support government support for marriage, such as tax breaks, and if they were better tailored to benefit all racial groups. She employs critical family theorizing to delineate an overarching orientation of structural oppression and unequal power relations that apparently advantages white, hetero-patriarchal nuclear families and marginalizes others as a function of marriage fundamentalism, unquote. She's nuts. She's just nuts. Take her to the loony bin. Honest to God, we used to have places for people like this. They were called mental institutions. Padded rooms, straitjackets. Can we please get back to putting these kinds of people in those situations again, in those circumstances? They're putting themselves in them. The problem is they're running rampant, they're running free, they're creating policy, and they're normalizing their insanity. I'm sure she's a bucket of fun to hang out with, don't you? Just a bucket of fun. I bet a vacation with her is a living nightmare. She can't even spell vacation. She's probably never even taken one. She doesn't know what they are. She probably thinks it's a construct of white supremacy, and white supremacists go on vacations and have good times. I am miserable and must be for the rest of my life. You know what? Here's the sad part. If you were to get in a time machine and go back in this crazy woman's past as a child, she probably had a very normal upbringing. It's quite possible she did. Santa showed up on Christmas Day, opened presents, went to church with her parents who were married and happy. I mean, it's quite possible that that's the case. And then she went off to college. And then that was it. Her need to be liked superseded her own ability to think. And before you know it, she's associating with people that maybe she wouldn't have normally in other healthy situations. And then she starts to like these people, and they start to like her because, well, none of them are thinking and they're all just getting along. And then before you know it, maybe she goes from being a completely normal, polite, and rational thinking younger child to all of the sudden now being an absolute whack job. I mean, honestly, these people drive, ladies and gentlemen. They have driver's licenses. They're behind the wheels of automobiles. This scares me. That's frightening enough. Honest to God, what is going on? Well, unfortunately, we know what's going on, don't we? We know what's happening. There's also this. This is a local issue. This was also thrown my way and discussed briefly with me, and then it made its way to Inside Edition, believe it or not. This is in the town where I live, and ironically enough, this was the elementary school where I went to school. This is hilarious. It's from Inside Edition. It is titled, Ohio Dad Arrested After Making Numerous Calls to Child's School About Amount of Homework Being Assigned. So saith the cops. This is from Inside Edition, published on March 19th. Adam Sizemore, 37, was arrested and charged with telecommunications harassment and menacing after phoning his child's school several times, cops said. An Ohio father's been arrested after allegedly making numerous calls to his child's school to complain about the amount of homework he was receiving, according to police. Adam Sizemore, 37, has been charged with telecommunications harassment and menacing after he allegedly phoned his child's school several times, including when he warned the principal that he, quote, better put his big boy pants on, unquote, leading the school official to fear violence, WXIX reported. Cops said that once the school stopped answering Sizemore's calls, he started calling the Oxford Police Department. Quote, he calls dispatch, I think it was 18 times roughly, Oxford Police Detective Sergeant Adam Price told Fox 8. During one call, Sizemore allegedly lost his patience when a dispatcher refused to directly connect him, with the police chief. Quote, he can come to my effing house. I pay for him. He can come to my house, unquote, Sizemore allegedly said during the call, according to the New York Post. Made the New York Post, too. Jesus. Unbelievable. Dispatchers then sent a team of officers to speak with Sizemore, who was taken into custody on the misdemeanor charges, WXIX reported. It says, quote, that ultimately ended when we took him into custody for telecommunications harassment as well as a menacing charge. Sizemore was charged with 2 first-degree misdemeanors for telecommunications harassment, according to the criminal complaint obtained by Fox 8. The menacing charge he faces is a 4th-degree misdemeanor. It's unknown if Sizemore has yet entered a plea nor obtained legal representation, the Oxford Criminal Courts tells Inside Edition Digital. There you go. Calling and harassing the school and the principal because there's too much homework. Again, we don't even know if that's true or not. I thought schools weren't giving out homework anymore. I thought that was kind of commonplace these days because everybody's just fat, lazy, and stupid. Isn't that? I thought that was just kind of, the going temperature of things these days. I don't know. It's odd, beyond disgusting too, of course. Anyway, let me mention this very quickly regarding the Crumbly case. Of course, as we know, that's wrapped up. I believe April 8th is the day when both parents are going to be sentenced. Keep in mind, they didn't break any law. Neither one of them. Both their lawyers said that, have stated that. In particular, James Crumbly's attorney has spoken out now publicly and said at no point did James break any law during the entire time, which he didn't. So keep in mind, ladies and gentlemen, you can go to jail for awaiting trial for something that you didn't do for crimes you didn't commit. That's exactly what's happened here. In the Oxford, Michigan school shooting scenario, and everybody's just turning a blind eye to it like it's not that big of a deal. And then, of course, now the school officials are not going to be charged with anything because, well, they're not going to be charged with anything. Government is protecting government, and that's the way that goes, as I've said previously. So nothing really new to support there. It's just the way that is. It wasn't an immunity agreement that was signed. It was something less than that takes place during the course of an investigation and during the course of a trial, where, again, a couple of those school employees sign this particular agreement that they, won't be held accountable for anything that gets brought out in court. And again, the prosecutor's office has said, well, there's no crime among these school employees that we can prosecute, so there's no need to prosecute. Oh, isn't that funny? No crime there, but there is a crime with parents for some reason, who also didn't break the law then? Because they didn't break the law, so, again, if it's confusing, it should be, because it's just government protecting government and destroying the family. And as I've said before, the Crumblies are white. So yeah, is this a race-related thing? You bet it is. Because if it were black, would they be bringing these kinds of charges? Is the Oxford, Michigan prosecution's office going to start now going after black parents if they are around and engage in these kinds of similar crimes? Time will tell. They haven't done it before, have they? I don't know. Maybe they have. But not like this. Not publicly like this, anyway. Okay, speaking of Oxford, Michigan, again, the superintendent search. Good God in heaven, you talk about a clown show. First of all, in one of these meetings that took place on March 12th, the sword neck guy, tattoo dude, came back and gave another presentation, and he runs down this list of 10 things that he wants to see happen in the school where the shooting took place and within the district, and he runs through it. And ladies and gentlemen, one of the ones that he brings up is he actually says this. Again, these poor bastards are so brainwashed, they don't even hear the things that come out of their mouths. He openly said that he wanted the section of the school where the shooting took place to be torn down and rebuilt so that younger students who come through the building don't have to be traumatized every single time they're walking through the scene of a murder and multiple murders. And yet, if that's a concern of his, endless parents continue to send their children to that school where murders took place. You can't fix these people. They're out to lunch. So their superintendent search, again, is equally as foolish as the people who attend these meetings. It appears that they've now narrowed it down to 3 people. There were more than 3 people who showed up to these initial meetings. And then it looks like they've narrowed it down within a day or so to just 3. You know, a couple of observations very quickly. There's a massive disconnect between, I would say, well, this is tough to describe. It appears that there's 2 men and 1 woman who are available to choose from now. It appears that they're going to go with the female if I had to take a guess. Why? She says what the board wants her to say. She's saying the same things that they want to hear, I should say. She's a woman. She looks like them. She's a leftist. It's obvious. You can see it in her face. She claims to be out of the gate this trauma-informed person, which is what the board is looking for, which is something that doesn't exist. You can't find a superintendent who can provide therapy to people or bring in people to provide therapy. That's not their job. And as we know, it's not the school's job to provide therapy either, but unfortunately, these people are so brainwashed, and American schools across the board are so brainwashed, that's what they've turned the environment into. They've turned the environment into a full-blown mental institution therapy session, and that if you're not focused on student wellness, quote unquote, then there's something wrong with you, or that you're out of touch. Couldn't be further from the truth. The people who are not focusing on academics and telling the truth, that's the issue there. Because one of the questions that was asked to one of the superintendent candidates was something like, what do you think? I'm assuming the same question was asked to all of them. It had to have been, but it, of course, had to do with safety. What are all of the things that you consider to be measurements of safety, or things that impact safety, either in a positive or in even a negative way within a school environment? Well, the fact is this, and I didn't hear it from them, keeping in mind I was only really listening to one person's response to that and not the others. But I didn't hear them say lying. I didn't hear anybody say, well, it's lying. The reason that schools are unsafe is because people are lying, being lied to, and believing lies. That's the entire reason. So, just sort of, again, kind of in summary and to fast forward, one of the older male, of the 2 males that were candidates apparently for superintendent in this district, one of them is older than the other. This guy, they all look like they're all in over their head. These two guys are like, they have to be thinking to themselves, these people are effing crazy. The school board members are effing crazy. The people here asking me questions who are parents in the community are effing crazy. And the only person who doesn't think that, again, is the female candidate, which is why I think the female candidate's going to get the job. It's because birds of a feather flock together and crazy loves company. So let's not kid ourselves. With that said, during the older gentleman who is again applying to be superintendent, he made his way here to the second meeting. But the people in the public who are in the room, he's taking questions directly from them. There's maybe like 6 or 7 people in the room, and one of the people in the room was one of the same women who stood up and ran out of the room screaming at the top of her lungs when I was there and said what I said. And she goes down this list of all of the things that are wrong with all of her kids. That her oldest is vomiting, and her oldest is having anxiety attacks, and her oldest is this, and her oldest is doing that. And she is quite literally looking at this male superintendent and saying, what am I supposed to do with my child? Now, what do you think the answer that the superintendent can possibly give? He can't logically give any kind of an answer other than looking at her and saying, perhaps it's you that needs the help because you sound like a crazy parent. You sound like a crazy person too. And she does, frankly. I mean, this is a mother who needs therapy herself. She's apparently single. She has 3 kids. And one of them is vomiting, apparently, from anxiety attacks. And she's openly saying this on YouTube like no one's going to say anything about this, or like this is going to be some kind of a secret. Speaking publicly about your own children is what adds to their anxiety. So again, look in the mirror if you want to see what crazy looks like. It really is bizarre. But again, he looked at her and he goes, I don't think that's my job. He goes, I hope that your daughter and people like your daughter get the help that they need, but I just don't know that that's my job. And he's right. I mean, he's right. It's not his job. So again, the definition of what these people are supposed to be doing is so manipulated and watered down and skewed that they don't know which way is up. I feel bad for all of them. I mean, I really do. A crazy environment like this is only going to attract two kinds of people: someone who wants the job and money, or someone who is crazy. And I'm not using that term crazy, in a dismissive way. I mean, they're literally falling in line with what got these people in this position in the first place, which, as I just said, is lying and lies and believing lies. The words that come out of their mouth are not real. The things they believe are not real. This is a dangerous environment. I wouldn't want to be a superintendent for any amount of money in that school district. Not at all. Which again boils it down. Again, if you're thinking about it like a bottleneck, it bottlenecks the crazy right into the neck. That's the only person that they're going to choose because they want the person who aligns with them ideologically. Not anybody else who actually shows up and tells the truth. They're not interested in the truth. I proved that. They're interested in their comfortable delusion and maintaining that under the guise of being a safe place. So it's going to be the female, guaranteed. I'd be shocked if it wasn't. And I'll tell you who the pick ends up being when it's all said and done. But Jesus, these poor bastards are out to lunch. It really is bizarre. And again, the male superintendents really have looks on their faces like they just walked into a mental institution, because they did. Let me read this now. This is a post from greatawakening.win. This also proves my endless points that people can get online and complain about their child's school environment, but it means nothing if you just keep sending your child there. Here's what the post said. Again, it was anonymous, but it was titled, "Our Schools Are Indoctrination Centers." Yeah, no kidding. They said, quote, "My daughter received an award. I took off from work and went to the award show. The invite said she was being given an award in excellence. As parents, we were proud of her. Let me tell you, this whole award was a crap. Was a crap," they type. And it has typos, so bear with it. It says, "It was purely for propaganda purposes. We start with the Black National Anthem. What the F? This made up divisive song does nothing but divide. It's the United States, not the United States of African America." It says, "What's next? The brown national anthem? How about the red national anthem? Would these retards be okay with the white national anthem? Outside the theater, because I was not going to listen to BS, is a display." It says, they wrote Barry Soetoro, Kamala Harris, and Orca, or OCRA, whoever that is, were highlighted as the heroes. There was no other people of ethnicity, just one race labeled heroes. Last retarded thing, every locker had Haiti flag on it. The kids don't know that Haiti is covered in gangs, with no law except the law of the jungle. What blind retard shit is this school system? Barry is a Satanist, Camel is a deep state pawn, and OCRA is an enabler and a deep state handler, offering up young women as a sacrifice. Jesus, these people are asleep and still in the cave watching shadows, unquote. Yeah, you're right. now my question is, do you keep sending your daughter there? Because if you do, then you're the problem. If a person is commenting consistently on the degenerate nature and brainwashed nature of an environment, you can't keep sending your kid there then. It's the literal self-admission that you have to pull them out permanently and forever. That's it. If they can read and write, they can teach themselves. They don't need you hovering over their shoulder, learning particular things, because that's not what happens in a brick and mortar school building anyway. So let them learn free in the confines of their own home, by themselves, a few hours a day, every day, bounce around online, read a book, walk the dog, do a puzzle, cook something. There's 1,000 things that a person can do, that an individual child can do, if taught correctly, what to do while parents are away at work, if that has to be the environment. I'm telling you, it's brainwashing on so many multiple dimensions and so many levels, and government always tries to slide in to those different dimensions to convince you that government is the answer. And they're not. They're never the answer, because everything they touch turns to dust. And unfortunately, speaking of turning to dust, that leads me to jab-related talk here. First of all, you've heard me mention the meat wagons, the old EMS, first responder ambulance runs that take place across the United States. As it turns out, locally here in the town where I live, so far this year, there have been at least, just this calendar year, so we're talking 3 months, 321 runs of the ambulance. And in the month of February, there were 180. Seems like a lot, doesn't it? Seems like higher than usual, potentially. I'd have to get a Freedom of Information Act request to find out, the pre-shot rollout and what the actual numbers were back then. But, if I'm a guessing person and an educated guess kind of individual, which I certainly am, I would venture to guess it's a lot lower than that. Just a hunch. Either way, I wanted to mention this too. This is on sagehannah.substack.com, put together by a Sage Hannah, apparently. And it was titled, "The Most Jabbed Countries in the World Have the Highest Cancer Rates, and It's a Landslide." It says the World Population Review, according to them, and Australia has the highest, whereas Sierra Leone has the lowest. And so here we go. They have a little chart here. World cancer rates. The highest include Australia, and then followed by New Zealand, Denmark, United States, Norway, Canada, Ireland, Netherlands, France, and Hungary. Now, I don't know about you, but I notice a particular race pattern with those particular countries, if you catch my drift. And then the lowest are Sierra Leone, Angola, Gambia, the Republic of the Congo, Nepal, Qatar, Yemen, Rwanda, Niger, and Timor. Interesting. I notice a little something there too. Isn't that interesting? Later on in their Substack here, they have a little excerpt from the book Conspirators' Hierarchy, The Story of the Committee of 300. And I wanted to read this particular excerpt from this particular page out of that book that they had. It says the following, quote, "At least 4 billion useless eaters shall be eliminated by the year 2050 by means of limited wars, organized epidemics of fatal rapid-acting disease, and starvation. Energy, food, and water shall be kept at subsistence levels for the non-elite, starting with the white populations of Western Europe and North America, and then spreading to other races. The population of Canada, Western Europe, and the United States will be decimated more rapidly than other continents, until the world's population reaches a manageable level of 1 billion, of which 500 will consist of Chinese and Japanese races, selected because they are people who have been regimented for centuries and who are accustomed to obeying authority without question." Unquote. And of course, it's a long book and it continues on and on. This is a well done Substack article, puts together a lot of different things. And yeah, I mean, it's common sense because we're watching it. The problem is so many people don't know what's happening. They have no idea. There's this one from Dr. William Mackis's Substack channel, mackismd.substack.com. It was titled, HIV mRNA Vaccine Has Failed Phase 1 Trials. HIV mRNA vaccine. The irony. It has puzzling skin side effects, it says, in up to 20% of vaccine recipients, according to a new article in Science, quote unquote. But they are pushing forward anyway. And you know why now. We all know why now. It has to do with the fact that HHS and the FDA have written informed consent out of the law. So anybody participating in any of these trials, and by the way, if you are, you're a fool, because they're injecting you with deadly poisons. And they're not telling you they're deadly poisons because they don't have to. They don't have to tell you anything about any side effect potentially. They just tell you it's good for humanity. And as long as they believe that it's good for the greater good and good for humanity and so on, well, then they just keep doing what they're doing and they don't have to tell people about any ill side effects or any informed consent whatsoever. And it's not just at the trial phase. That will be when they roll it out for the general public. And mark my words, they're going to roll out an HIV shot, which doesn't even exist, for the general public. Because people are going to start showing that they have compromised immune systems from the COVID shots, which is then going to lead those people, if they're still alive, to go out and get another shot to boost their immune system, and then it will kill them. I'm telling you, it's a shell game like nobody's business. And instead of saying the pea is under this particular shell, now go ahead and watch the shells move, it doesn't matter which shell you pick up. There's either going to be a pea underneath every single shell, or there's not going to be any peas under any shell, and you're going to get tricked one way or another. You're playing a game that's not a game. Not anymore. Never was a game to begin with, but it certainly isn't now. That's why they keep rewriting all of the rules, and they keep rewriting all of the symptoms and gaslighting people with all these headlines. And I'm sure you've seen them. You know, wearing lipstick increases your chances of a heart attack. Gardening isn't recommended because you're likely to have a stroke. Tying your shoes can cause blindness. It's 1,000 different things. And they're making all of this up and putting these out as headlines. And people believe them. Oh, that's why Aunt Becky, who's 50 years old, fell over from a heart attack while she was driving, because gas-powered automobiles have been known to cause instant cancer and blackouts behind the wheel. It's absurd things like that people are actually believing. Government and media are working hand in hand to provide people with these rationalized answers, and they're just blindly believing them. It's astounding. I'm sure there are people, of course, who aren't, but good Lord. Let me play this very quickly. This is 6.5 minutes long, and this is a funeral director. This is also from William Mackis's website here, or Substack page, rather. And it says that she describes what she is seeing. Give this a listen in 3, 2, 1.
Okay, we are live. Can you tell us who you are?
Yes. My name is Lauren. I am a board-certified, dually licensed funeral service professional in the state of Mississippi.
Okay, and so I was just asking you some questions before us to figure out what we're going to talk about today. And
sure.
You had mentioned seeing different things going on during COVID than what your profession looked like prior to
Correct.
COVID. So can you talk about some of those things?
Sure. Prior to COVID, the death ranges, we rarely saw infants passing away. Now there's an excessive amount of that happening. And just the death range from infants to elderly the increase of young people, the increase of elderly people, it's just mind blowing. The wave of death that the funeral service industry has experienced, and certainly it's all across the state. There have been lots of need for additional, of course, professionals in this industry, which just aren't there. So, of course, we feel the burden of that.
And as an embalmer, you said that some of your processes have actually had to change.
Correct.
I'm just curious, and you don't have to answer this if you're not able to, but are you able to see if someone has had the vaccine or not when they come in?
There are some cases that information is given. However, there are cases that it's not given, that information is not given.
Okay. And so you did say you were seeing some irregular clotting and different vascular type issues.
Of course. The past couple of years, there's been lots of irregularities. Prior to 2021, the vascular system pretty much was intact on mostly everybody, that I could go in and preserve the body traditionally via just one point. There are some cases, of course, that were unique. However, as time has gone on, the vascular system has become increasingly difficult to work with. It's occluded. There is no way to preserve the body traditionally as we once did. We're having to go all over the body to preserve, the foot, the hand. Also, we have a method that we actually use externally when we are unable to use the vascular system for adequate preservation. The whole practice has changed in that area.
And of course, this is anecdotal, but why do you think that is?
Why do I think that is? There's something that's going into people's bodies that is creating something that doesn't belong there. And ultimately, if it doesn't belong there, then the body doesn't know what to do with it. Prior to whatever's happening here, there are chemicals that we could use to put inside the body that traditionally would break down any blockages that are living in these vessels. Now those chemicals don't work. I'm seeing things that stay intact. They don't dissipate like normal. They, keep their integrity, and they pull, and it's not normal. Yeah.
I don't know if you're able to comment on this as well, but have you seen an increase in younger people's deaths when it comes to different heart issues, myocarditis, or things like that?
Yes. And also, of course, I know people that have developed, those illnesses. So that are young and should not be experiencing that. Strokes, heart attacks, myocarditis.
Is there anything else you want to tell people about what you're saying?
I would just like to say that something has changed, and it's affecting a lot of people, and that we just need to think before we just put whatever in our bodies. Our immune system is God created us to have an immune system to fight off illnesses. And I think we just need to think critically before we just insert anything into our body.
And if we do, of course, we're not giving out medical advice, but if we do, and we're seeing irregularities, we have to ask, why is this happening?
Yes, why is this happening? And, why is this happening? And I need to tell people. And that's why I'm here today, because people need to know that what I'm seeing, because not everybody sees that, is definitely different. The blood is being affected by whatever this is that's going on, and it's killing people. And I just strongly recommend people to think critically before you just put anything into your body.
Everybody go get your shot. It works incredibly well, 95%, maybe even more than that. It works incredibly well. It's a great vaccine. It's a safe vaccine. I recommend you take it. I recommend take the vaccines. I did it. It's good. Take the vaccines. The vaccines do work and they are effective.
Now, again, Macus or whoever it is that put that video together threw Trump at the end there, and I didn't cut it off. I left it there because we know that he said that. We know he said those things. We know that he went around from rally to rally and radio show to radio show, promoting the shots. We know that. We know that, but as I've been over here on the show, the lesson is that you're not supposed to listen to politicians. That's the lesson out of all of this, among endless other things. You're not supposed to trust government. So don't. That's all. I don't like the fact that he pushed the shots, just like no one does who knows what's really going on. So I'm going to end with this. And again, this has to do with illegal immigration just very quickly. Just to kind of bring back one last geopolitical thing here, which I think is going to be a big problem going forward. Clearly, it almost goes without saying. Of course, we had the Supreme Court earlier this week rule in favor of Texas arresting illegal aliens. 2 individuals on the Supreme Court dissented in this decision, and it was Jackson and Sotomayor. And their reason for it, of course, for their dissension was emotional. Had nothing to do with facts, had nothing to do with the law. It was emotions. They said something like, well, it's going to sow the seeds of division or stir up division or something along those lines. Chaos, I believe, was the exact word that they used. It's going to sow chaos throughout the country. Ladies and gentlemen, if you have Supreme Court justices sitting on the Supreme Court operating on emotion, we have a problem. That means we don't have law in this country, and that's an issue. There was also, of course, a federal judge that ruled that illegal immigrants can possess guns under the Second Amendment, so they say. This was a black female. I believe, the U.S. District Court judge ruled earlier this month that completely prohibiting illegal immigrants from possessing firearms is a violation of the Second Amendment. This, of course, had to do with the specific case of an illegal alien obtaining a gun, and then was charged under Title 18 of Criminal U.S. Code, a measure preventing illegal migrants from possessing firearms. This individual had no criminal history of improper use of a gun, and therefore, according to the court, did not present a major public danger when exercising his Second Amendment right in Chicago in 2020. So that's not good. Again, does it mean that they can buy a gun legally? No. Can they obtain or possess one legally? Well, if they can't buy one legally, then they're in possession of an illegal firearm, as it were, or they are illegal and possessing a firearm. It begs the question moving forward that when illegals, and let's assume they already have guns because many of them already do, that if they are in possession of a firearm that they obtained illegally, can they still be charged with a crime if they are caught with the gun or if they use said gun? I think our lesson in all of this, based on everything that's transpired over the years, is that will depend on where they live and where the crime is committed, and of course, who the crime is committed upon. So, I've said it before, I'll say it again, and I highly recommend it. You need to start carrying a gun if you don't. It needs to be loaded, one in the pipe, ready to rock and roll. You need to keep your head up, head on a swivel, and mind your surroundings as much as possible. Again, we're at war here in this country, and illegals are obtaining more rights than what we have. I think endless examples that I've brought up on the show, of course, and endless examples that endless other people have brought up clearly prove that point. With that said, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for listening. I appreciate it, and I'll catch you on Monday. Peace.
Thank you for listening to American Education FM. Make sure and check out AmericanEducationFM.com for more information. Take care and God bless.